In 2019, one apartment in Manhattan sold for $238 million, the most expensive sale in American history. And the man who bought it, one of the wealthiest people on the planet, had every single building in this city available to him. He could have bought anything, but he chose one specific address. And that choice tells you everything. Because at the level of wealth we're talking about, the address is never about what you can afford. It's about who you are. I call it the Four Wealth Identities. And once you see it, you'll never look at this city's skyline the same way again. I'm Svetlana Gryazeva, a Manhattan New Development Specialist. And this is the Real Billionaire Map. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the Four Wealth Identities. Four completely different ways the ultra-wealthy think about the Manhattan address. By the end, you'll be able to read any building in this city like a financial personality profile. Let's get into it. The first wealth identity is the spectacle buyer. And it's centered on a stretch of Midtown Manhattan that the real estate world calls Billionaires Row. A cluster of super tall residential towers rising above the southern edge of Central Park. 157 Central Park Tower, 220 Central Park South, 432 Park Avenue. Buildings so tall, they created their own weather patterns and their own category of buyer. Now, most people assume that anyone with enough money automatically ends up here, but that's not how it works. The spectacle buyer chooses Billionaires Row for a very specific reason, and it's not just the views. It's about the announcement. When you buy on Billionaires Row, you're making a statement that is visible from almost every neighborhood in the city. The architecture itself is the message. Altitude is the currency. The $238 million sale I mentioned, that happened right here at 220 Central Park South. Ken Griffin didn't just buy an apartment. He bought the most visible possible declaration of exactly where he stands. That is the spectacle buyer. Wealth as architecture. The address as a signal that travels. But the second wealth identity is also rooted in signal, just a completely different kind. The second wealth identity is the legacy buyer, and you find them on Park Avenue. Buildings like 740 Park Avenue, classic pre-war architecture, limestone facades, no glass curtain walls. No record-breaking heights. From the outside, these buildings don't announce much. But inside Manhattan's financial elite, they announce everything. 740 Park Avenue is widely regarded as one of the most prestigious and selective residential co-ops in the world. And here is what makes it fascinating. On Billionaires Row, the barrier to entry is the price. Here, the barrier to entry is something money alone cannot buy. To get into 740 Park Avenue, you have to be approved by the co-op board. And that board has rejected extremely wealthy and high-profile buyers. Not because they couldn't afford it, but because wealth alone doesn't qualify you. The legacy buyer understands this. In fact, that's precisely why they want it. Over the decades, 740 Park has been home to some of the most consequential names in American finance and industry. Names like Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, John D. Rockefeller Jr., Stephen Schwarzman, David Koch, Israel Englander, and Woody Johnson. People who want to live somewhere that tells a very specific group, the right group, exactly who they are. This is old money logic. The address is a quiet signal to the right people, not a declaration to everyone. And this logic isn't exclusive to Park Avenue. You find it on the Upper East Side too, Carnegie Hill, then Central Park West, the classic Prestige corridor. The psychology is identical. Permanence over spectacle. So far, we have two identities, one loud, one quiet. But the third wealth identity doesn't signal at all. And the reason why is the most revealing thing about serious money in this city. The third wealth identity is the anti-spectacle buyer. And if you want to find them, you have to go downtown. Far from Central Park, far from the super talls, into neighborhoods like TriBeCa and its neighbor Soho just to the north, where the buildings are low, the streets are cobblestone, and the floor plans are the size of entire floors. TriBeCa consistently ranks among the most expensive neighborhoods in New York City, a 2025 neighborhood median price of $3.7 million. Individual transactions well into the tens of millions. This is some of the deepest luxury demand in the entire country. But you almost never hear about it. And that's exactly the point. The anti-spectacle buyer has made a deliberate decision. No altitude, no visibility. What they want is scale. Enormous loft apartments in converted industrial buildings, combined with something a super tall generally cannot offer: anonymity and discretion. In TriBeCa, you can be extraordinarily wealthy and completely invisible. The neighborhood doesn't signal wealth to outsiders. It signals taste to insiders. But the fourth wealth identity doesn't fit any of these three categories. It's not about spectacle, legacy, or invisibility. It's about something more modern, and it's reshaping the most expensive real estate market in this city right now. The fourth wealth identity is the ecosystem buyer. In 2025, the single most expensive neighborhood in New York City by median sale price wasn't Billionaires Row. It wasn't TriBeCa. It was Hudson Yards, a neighborhood that barely existed in its current form 15 years ago. Let that land for a second. An entirely new neighborhood built from scratch on far west side of Manhattan now commands higher median prices than anywhere else in the city. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a very specific type of buyer chose it. Deliberately. The ecosystem buyer doesn't think about real estate the way the other identities do. They're not buying a signal. They're not buying admission to a club. They're not buying invisibility. They are buying infrastructure. Hudson Yards was designed from the ground up as a fully integrated luxury ecosystem. Residential towers sitting directly above world-class retail, dining, and wellness facilities. Everything new, everything optimized, everything working together. These are people who optimize every part of their lives, their businesses, their schedule, their portfolios. The ecosystem buyer wants a home that performs. Turnkey, seamless, no friction. And they're paying the highest prices in the city to get it. Working in Manhattan new development, I can tell you something that doesn't show up in any market report. When a serious buyer first reaches out to me, they almost never lead with a budget. They lead with a neighborhood, a building type, a feeling they're chasing. At the moment they tell me that, I already know an enormous amount about how they think. The buyer who opens with Billionaires Row is telling me they want their wealth to have a physical form, something visible, something that exists in the skyline of one of the most photographed cities on earth. The buyer who opens with 740 Park is telling me they're playing a longer, older game. The buyer who opens with TriBeCa is telling me they've moved past the need to signal anything to anyone outside their immediate circle. And the buyer who opens with Hudson Yards is telling me they've taken systems and they want every part of their life optimized, including where they live. None of this is the right answer. All of them are correct for the right person. The question was never, what can you afford? It's which identity reflects how you actually think about wealth. And finding the address that answers that question honestly, that's where the real decision lives. Once you understand that, you can read any Manhattan address like a personality profile. The spectacle buyer, the legacy buyer, the anti-spectacle buyer, and the ecosystem buyer. And the framework that ties them all together, the four wealth identities. Manhattan is a map of how people who have built the most, earned the most, and thought hardest about wealth choose to live. Every address is an answer to the same question. Who are you? And what does your money mean to you? The buyers who are clearest about that make the best decisions because they're not chasing a building. They're buying a reflection of something they've already figured out about themselves. If this gave you a new way of looking at Manhattan, subscribe because this is exactly what this channel is about. Not just what's for sale, but how the market actually thinks. I'll see you in the next one.